Commission meeting for March 8th, 2023 to order. Stefan, if you'd like to read the instructions, please.
All right, welcome to our virtual meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members of the commission, if you're able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. In this meeting, panelists have the ability to mute and unmute themselves. Please use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Staff, please use the raise hand feature when you're asked a question. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. Staff will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the commission, please send it to the email listed on today's agenda. Chair Kovich, floor is yours.
Thanks, Stefan. Aiden, if you could call a roll, please.
Alder Miadzi. I don't see on yet. Barbara Harrington McKinney. But don't see it. Chris
I
McKay.
see Alder. Yeah, I see Alder Miadzi just joined, Aiden.
Okay. Chris McCahill.
Yeah, here.
Ann Kovich.
Here.
Denise Jeffs.
Here.
Robbie Weber.
Here.
Patricia Bennett is excused. Bridget Brown. I don't see it. Bill Bremer is excused. Harold Cleaves.
Here.
And Darren Wozniewski is excused.
Okay, thanks. And clearly, Harold, you're voting tonight. Alder Miadzi?
I didn't hear my name called, probably because I was a second late.
I think he called you right before you signed in, and here's Bridget. So Aiden, you want to do those for the roll call again?
Sure. Charles Miadzi.
Present.
And Bridget Brown.
Here. Okay, thank you. All right. Everybody have a chance to look at the minutes from the February 22nd meeting. Alder Miadzi?
Motion to approve.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? Harold?
Yep, second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no hands, we'll assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. Robbie?
Since I wasn't at the meeting, I'll just abstain.
You're going to abstain? Okay. All righty. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any public comment on items not on the agenda, Aiden?
No, we do not.
Do we have any comments at all tonight?
We have one registrant in support for item 3, but not wishing to speak. So.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Any disclosures or recusals this evening? Okay. Seeing none. All right. Stephanie, item number 2, Legislature 76640. Annual motorcycle parking garage rate increase.
Hi, thank you. All right, and I apologize. This is my first one, so bear with me while I work through this. So yes, one of the things I'm looking at is where in the parking division where things can be adjusted with current rates, occupancy levels, and one of the things I noticed was our 24/7 motorcycle permit has been at $225 since 2013. A pretty good deal for 24/7 access to garage parking. So what I looked at was how can we increase it and where does that compare to the actual cost to operate each parking space? So I want to increase it, but I didn't want to go too far into it or too overboard where it would actually scare people away. So it does cost us roughly $756 a year per stall. So these permits are $225, so we are taking a loss on that. So I'm looking to increase it to extra $100 right now to $325, just to try to recoup some of those lost funds. Just so you can kind of compare, a 24/7 car permit ranges from $200 to $250 a month. So this is an annual fee. I think it still provides a low cost option for people to use for mopeds or motorcycles. And since the moped ordinance went into place, we did see, a lot of people trying to find a location to store their moped. So I'm just looking to increase the $100 right now.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie. Comments or questions for Stephanie? Harold.
Yeah, thanks. Couple questions, and yeah, thank you for sharing these numbers on the cost and the revenue. Like, that's one of the things I was not aware of, how much it costs and how little comparatively the permit costs. So I'm glad we're looking at this. Couple of questions. You mentioned that so there are 55 spaces, and there are only 20 people holding a permit, but at some locations all the spaces are taken, which makes me think, is there any thought about having pricing differ by location, where like locations that are in higher demand maybe warrant a higher fee?
Yeah, I definitely think that's an option. As I'm slowly working into this new role, I'm trying to look at each garage and where the price points are at, where the demand is at. I think that we can definitely look at something like that. I also think we can look at maybe adding more spaces in those garages that have more demand to increase our permits. We have a lot of spaces in garages that we would think would need the demand, but it doesn't seem to be there. But yeah, there's definitely something that I'm happy to look at, because I think that we do need to start examining where the occupancy is at and what our fees are at.
Yeah, thanks. I think that would be great. I mean, I think with regard to expanding spaces, I mean, that sounds like it probably would be, then we lose more money potentially. So I think looking at the pricing piece of it maybe makes more sense.
Okay.
The other questions I have with regard to pricing differentiation, has there been any thought? I don't know how much that has been a thing in Madison, but the move toward promoting electric motorcycles and like maybe having a rate that would be lower for electric motorcycles to promote the adoption of those.
I can look into that. I don't know how many electric motorcycles we see in the garages, but I can have staff take a look at that and see what they're seeing. Yeah, I'm happy to look into that.
Yeah, I think, we often talk about, oh, the city promotes electric vehicles, but when we say electric vehicles, we often think like electric cars and when we build charging stations and all of that. And I guess charging stations, I'm not sure if that would be relevant for motorcycles as well. But yeah, I think that might be something worth looking into.
Okay.
That's all I had, because otherwise, this seems good to get the revenue a little bit closer to what the cost is, and then maybe continue to explore other options to improve this.
So Harold, let me just clarify. So your thoughts are along the lines with Stephanie that we should consider increasing it now, and then maybe look at some of these other suggestions that you were making as to ways that we could refine things down the road?
Right, because I get the impression that, some of these things we would need to do a little bit more exploration of, like, what is the occupancy rate in different places? What would be a price that balances the demand and the supply? But for now, it seems good to just, something that hasn't been raised in however many years, and that is clearly not covering the cost. I mean, I think from the parking utilities perspective, we should definitely do that raise at this point and then tinker around with additional things later.
Okay, thanks. Other comments or questions? Chris?
Thanks. I think that all sounded right to me. Just one clarifying question on that. Since we're talking about variable pricing between the garages, I was trying to look it up. I can't figure it out for sure, but I'm guessing a motorcycle pass now is not tied to a specific facility. So once you have one, you can park anywhere.
No, it is tied to a specific garage. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we would be talking about moving forward with the increase and then exploring how that might need to vary from garage to garage is what I'm thinking. Okay, thanks.
And that's a similar pattern to what we do with pricing for permits in the various garages, because over the years, we've seen some where, occupancy is low. So, we've lowered prices to get people to use it more, and the opposite where occupancy was high and we increased prices to take advantage of that. So, same theory, it sounds like. Other comments or questions? Okay, we would need a motion to approve this resolution. Chris?
Yeah, move approval.
Robbie's at a second?
That is
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? I'm going to assume a unanimous consent vote unless anybody wishes to vote no or abstain. I don't see any hands, so you have unanimous approval, and Aiden, I'll sign it and get it off to you so that we can have a record of that. Okay, great. Thanks so much, Stephanie. Okay, next we have the Harvey Schmidt reconstruction. Tom, is that you?
Yep, I'll take this, and along with me, Steve Sontag is here from engineering. So
okay.
He'll be able to answer some questions. I'll share my screen. I'll just give you a little overview of this project. So this is Schmidt and Harvey, just south of University Avenue here. So the project is the one block of Schmidt Place between University Avenue and Harvey, and then Harvey Street between Schmidt and Ridge. This is Bagels Forever, just to get your bearings. And this was the old Smokies that is being redeveloped. So I'll just show you what the existing conditions look like. So this is just Google Street View from 2019. Looks generally the same right now, but unimproved street. There's no curb and gutter except, this is Harvey Street looking east. So except for this new residential apartments that were built on the north side of Harvey at Ridge, there's curb there and sidewalk, but that's the only part of Harvey Street that currently has curb and sidewalk. Then we go west to Schmidt Place. There's curb along the east side and a little bit of curb around this radius onto Harvey Street. But you can see pretty much the entire east side is Bagels Forever. And then the west side was a parking lot, which is part of that redevelopment that's just getting started now. So that's being reconstructed into a multi-use building. So that's the overview of what it looks like now. And this is the plan of what we are hoping to do. We'd be adding curb and gutter throughout the entire project. And actually, I'll just go to the aerial view so you can see here. And catching this existing sidewalk, extending the sidewalk, completing it on the north side of Harvey Street, and connecting it into the west. And then I'll stay on Harvey. No sidewalk on the south, You can see the dashed line is the right-of-way line. So on the north side, it's a little different where it narrows as part of this apartment complex. So we've got the sidewalk in. We're kind of limited by that right-of-way line, so we've got it pushed up right close to the right-of-way line. So a little bit narrower terrace. The terrace is 6 feet here on the west side, and it narrows down to 3 feet, and that's just the limits of the right-of-way. And then we connect back in. The south side is kind of lined with trees, so we're preserving the trees there. I think this is a pretty good design, getting this sidewalk in. Sticking with Harvey Street, the parking situation right now, is that parking is allowed the entire way on both sides. We are proposing to limit the parking to what is shown here. So the red rectangles would be open parking spots. And the reason for that is fire department requirements for multi-unit apartment buildings. They need 20 feet of clear space. So without the curb and gutter right now, they're able to get that because people kind of park off the road. It's wider. So with us narrowing it up to 28 feet, that would allow for an 8-foot parking lane and then the 20-foot clear space adjacent to the parking. So the plan is to alternate sides of parking. This was, we presented this on Monday in a public information meeting, and we got that feedback back from the residents that if we just had parking on one side, that's would likely lead to a speeding issue. So we think this is a good compromise. Still enough space for the fire department, but still allowing parking on both sides. I think that pretty much covers it for Harvey Street. Schmidt Place. The east side with Bagels Forever, they have a 25-year parking lease for this area adjacent to their building. So, and with the building as close as it is to the street, there's really not much change we can do with this side. So we're not even getting into this curb. It would just be pavement west of the curb and then improvements to the west side of the street. Bagels Forever has these flower silos here that they get regular deliveries to with large trucks. So that's been coordinated and worked out between both properties to maintain access to those silos with their truck deliveries. So they come in off of University Avenue, turn around here, and then go back out. So it's kind of a little bit unique situation. We did look at this through Complete Green Streets, Harvey Street, classified as a neighborhood yield street, but with the little caveat that with those multi-unit apartment buildings, the fire department requires that 20-foot clear space. But still our design fits within Complete Green Streets for both of these. Schmidt Place is classified as a mixed-use neighborhood street with the businesses. So our design does fit with that as well. And this is just what it looks like, the cross section. So the parking would alternate, but this is generally what it would look like. Sidewalk on one side, grass terrace on both sides. And then Schmidt Place, again, just the sidewalk on the one side. We can allow some parking, but with the truck deliveries, that is going to be pretty limited throughout the day. During the day, we would restrict parking, which is the way it's operated for the past many years since Bagels Forever has been there. So, yeah, like I said, we had the public information meeting on Monday. It went well. Really, the only concern were speeds on Harvey Street, and we originally presented just parking on the north side, but we checked back with the fire department, and they are okay with alternating that side, the parking from side to side, to maintain the 20-foot clear space. I think that covers it. So we can be able to take any questions.
Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to make sure I understood the parking situation on Schmidt Place. So the 25-year lease you mentioned, that's basically they've got what looks like off-street parking, but it's in the right of way. That's what we're talking about there, right?
Yeah, you can kind of see they've got some parked cars here, and I think I think it extends down to about where the silos are.
You're correct.
Okay.
It does. And that is a 25-year lease that just got extended. So I think it's actually at the council. It may have gotten extended. They're in the process of trying to extend that lease.
Okay, thanks. And then just, I didn't follow completely. Are we talking about parking on the other side?
So historically, there has been no parking on the other side except down by the residential area. With this new development coming in, we could look into allowing some limited parking, like overnight or during the afternoon. But to maintain the deliveries to Bagels Forever, we have to keep it pretty clear between University Avenue and their delivery area.
Okay, and I'm guessing do you know where the curb cuts will be for the new development? Is that what's shown there?
Yeah, I can actually scroll down just a tad, would you please, Tom? So with this development at Flad, I'm just sorry to interrupt, but the Flad development actually provided an access and an easement for Bagels Forever for their semi, which is right on the left side of the screen. There, right where Tom's hand is. So they actually provided an easement for Bagels Forever to allow them to pull in their semi and back it up to their loading dock, which is on the east side. One of the major reasons why the width is required with Schmidt Place, to allow for the semis in and out and getting the access in and out. So ideally, we want them coming in off of University and leaving out Schmidt Place to University.
All right, thanks. And you guessed my next question, which was whether we needed the 32 feet. And I figured it was because of that reason. So I don't love the width of the street, but I can see what's going on there. So thanks.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Bridget, go ahead.
Yeah, Tom, can you just confirm? So I'm not even familiar with what the UW facility is there, with the kind of long buildings. What is that? And are we comfortable that, do they really only need the parking that's in front of those buildings for whatever happens there?
So for the fire department's requirements you're asking? Or
no, I'm just trying to think about overall parking needs for the neighborhood.
Yeah, we didn't do a formal parking study, but just kind of anecdotally.
Just anecdotally, yeah.
The north side is generally parked up pretty heavily. So like this building, I mean, they do have some parking in the back and on the side, but I think this is generally used by residents on the north side.
Okay.
The south side, they're just, we can fit in those spaces that I showed, but there's just a lot of driveways on the south side, so it's kind of limited anyway.
Yeah, and so how will the parking on the north side of Harvey be limited and indicated? I think it's a cool idea to kind of alternate sides like that in order to achieve the needed width, but how is that going to be physically or you know, how is the engineering for that limiting of parking going to happen?
So we'll just sign it as no parking anytime
No
between
parking.
the
Okay.
between the areas. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Bridget. Robbie, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I actually just walked this today because it's near my house and I knew it was going to be on the agenda. So the project only goes just barely past Schmidt. Is that correct?
Yeah, here are the limits right here.
Yeah.
The sidewalk extends to the existing sidewalk.
Okay. I think that you're going to lose a nice tree on that corner, but you know, I think it's been chopped a lot by MG&E as well. So
That is, Robbie, that tree is actually slated for removal by forestry because it's in pretty rough shape, has some
Yeah.
rotten limbs. So yes,
Okay.
that is unfortunate. And to the east, there's a giant oak tree that we are right there, that we're actually meandering the sidewalk around and saving it. So we're going to do everything we can to not disturb that 40-inch oak tree. We're going to put specials in the special language in the contract that does not allow root cutting at all through that area.
Okay. Yeah. I was wondering because that's another nice tree there. And
Yeah, it's a giant oak and we don't have many of them. So we're going to do everything we can to save that.
right. So I'm sort of curious why this project isn't going all the way down Harvey, because Harvey's in pretty bad shape to the west. So I'm
The
just sort
street
of curious
itself,
why it's not.
the street is actually not in bad shape. It's been chip sealed a couple of times. But the limits of this project were set due to the development. And we do have a future project to continue the sidewalk all the way to Blackhawk. We may even be looking into that this fall. We have, so there is a future project to continue sidewalk, at least on the north side, all the way to Blackhawk.
Okay.
On Harvey Street.
Maybe I'm thinking of another of those parallel streets because some of them are in pretty bad shape.
Yeah.
But I guess I did notice that farther west, and you know, I'm only bringing this up because we're changing the parking situation. It looks like most of the street between Schmidt and Ridge are RP3, but then the area along the park to the west, so the south side, does not seem to have any restrictions. And I am guessing it is being heavily used by commuters because it was entirely parked up when I walked it in the middle of the afternoon. And I know a lot of people park there and then jump on the bus. So I'm wondering if restricting the parking in the area of the project, I don't know whether there's no RP3 because it's along the park and there are no residences, or whether nobody's requested it. I don't know if it would be wise to extend the RP3 because it seems to be discontinuous. In front of some of the residential areas to the west, there's RP3, but then along the park, there's no RP3. And I think a lot of people are using it for commuter parking. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there because I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on the parking situation with the change.
Yeah, we can keep that in mind. I'm guessing it's kind of been working, so we haven't heard about it, but yeah, maybe we do get some complaints or requests after this.
I know this has been getting a lot of traffic because of the construction on University Avenue. because I've noticed it myself when I'm back there. So yeah, I think the chicane with the parking is probably a good idea because the bike lanes on University end at Hill Street. So theoretically, people are using Harvey if they get off of University Avenue and need to be on the south side of University Avenue. That's pretty heavily used bike route there. If they're not already, if they're not on Bluff, they use Harvey. So that's
Is that all you had then, Robbie? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Harold. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I guess maybe some of my questions were answered with Robbie's comment because I was also going to ask about, I think when we talked about University Avenue reconstruction and there wouldn't be bike facilities on University and there is no continuous parallel route there. But yeah, I think Harvey Street is at least one of those that gets you through some parts. I personally use it to get like to the Whole Foods, which eventually will disappear. But yes, I was wondering if there's been any thought on how we accommodate bikes on here. I think in theory, this being a neighborhood yield street, and maybe, you know, we can do some bike boulevard treatments once the whole stretch is reconstructed, should be fine. Right now, yeah, I mean, since there is so much parking utilization, since the pavement is rough, I think it's, especially in the winter, it can be not great for safely biking there, but I figure maybe with the new pavement and the new width, maybe this should all work out. But I think looking at this as a corridor, as we think about this as a potential bike route, I think would be good. Then specific question. So since it is a neighborhood yield street, so with what is being proposed here, like the idea of the neighborhood yield street is, if I remember correctly, that if there is parking, like if parking is used, then two cars can pass each other to slow things down. So are we still achieving that goal with the proposed design?
So yeah, it's kind of definitely a situation that we did not anticipate when Complete Green Streets was the guide was created. But I think with everything, if all the parking spaces are being used, it's going to act pretty similar to a neighborhood yield street. We're going to try to allow parking, so you know, so they're not parked right across from each other, so we still allow the space for the fire department, but you're not able to fly right down one side, especially if you meet opposing vehicles. So the technically I guess it would depend on how you define the travelway with alternate side parking like this. If you're going to define it as a 20-foot travelway width, because you're only looking at it right where, you know, in the middle of one side of parking, then the travelway width is beyond what a neighborhood yield street should be. But if you're kind of considering the whole street overall, I think it does. I would call it a travelway width of less or falling under the neighborhood yield street parameters.
Okay. Yeah,
So I mean, I'm kind of a gray area.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the picture in the neighborhood yield street in the guide where you do have cars parked staggered on both sides, but then what's left in the middle is probably less than what we will have here. And so, yeah, thinking, I mean, you know, maybe this is fine for now, or maybe we should take another look at the lane width here. And if we do make it a little wider than what we are thinking for neighborhood yield street, then maybe this is a good case of, you know, doing some observation after it's been built, if this actually is enough to slow cars down. And this is maybe also another question. I mean, are we thinking, is this enough traffic calming treatment, or should we consider adding a speed bump somewhere as we're building it?
That is something that we considered, and I didn't draw it up, but you can see there would be enough space for a speed hump right here, and a second one right here. But I guess with the whole neighborhood yield street, the thing about neighborhood yield streets is, and I don't know if it's called out directly in the guide, but the idea is that there are going to be residential driveways on both sides of the street that are kind of staggered, that allow you to pull off into a driveway to allow the opposing vehicle, or wait for the opposing vehicle to pass. And that was part of the fire department's issue here, is that this long stretch of no driveways in front of these apartments and then in front of these apartments. So it's a little bit different in that way. But I think it could go either for speed humps. I think it could go either way. We could put in 2 speed bumps here, but I kind of lean towards doing it without, since it's been in this condition for so long without. We haven't had a crash history. We haven't really had complaints. So
yeah, I mean, I guess the argument for doing it is if it's cheaper if you do it as part of the reconstruction rather than adding them later. So, if we realize, oh, actually now that the pavement is nice, people go fast, and then it's more cost to add it later. So, but I don't feel super strong about this.
Maybe it looks like Tom Lynch has his hand up. Tom, did you have some comments in that regard?
Yeah, just more of a comment regarding this, the fire requirements, 20-foot clear, and the like. As we're trying to put right now, complete green streets is a resolution, and we're trying to put it into the ordinance. And I guess we've had a fair number of meetings with our attorney's office and the like, and we will have to make a couple of modifications in the ordinance, particularly 1623, just to address some of this fire equipment requirements. I don't think in the overall context of complete green streets, it will make that much difference in development pattern and street design. But I don't know if the fire equipment requirements were fully baked through, in the complete streets guide, and we're actually going to probably have to circle back and add 1 paragraph in the complete green streets guide as well.
Okay, well, that's unfortunate. All right, well, that's all I have.
So you're going to leave it up to staff with regard to speed humps, Harold, or before we go to Alder Paulson, just want to close that loop, Tom and Harold. And Tom, what's your thinking? I don't know how the fire trucks feel about speed humps.
Well, I mean, that should be fine. I think, yeah, I don't have strong opinions. If anybody else in the commission feels like we should definitely do speed humps or not, I'm open to that, but I'm happy leaving this to staff and their judgment.
the other thing with speed humps that I would just say is that really the only cost savings is in the mobilization, because a lot of times, even if we put speed humps in the plans, the contractor will pretty much build the street and then come back in and cut in the speed humps as they would normally. So there's not really a ton of cost savings with adding it to the contract.
Okay, thanks. That's good to know.
Okay, thanks, Harold. Alder Paulson, go ahead.
Yeah, I was originally just going to chime in as just to say that, if we only got one thing wrong and only needed one paragraph to go back and fix complete green streets, I think that was a pretty big win because it was a huge document. So a little bit of a renovation isn't the end of the world there. So overall, I still think that's great. But since we brought up the topic of speed humps, I'm here specifically about the next item, which is going to also talk about potential speed humps. And so I'm only speaking as an alder on the other side of town, but I would put the speed hump in early on. And it's a bummer that it doesn't save as much to do it. But I think this street probably deserves it, or probably could use it. I think there's a bunch of others in that area. And I know cars are often flying around in there. So I just, to make the alder's life easier in the future, I would just put them in now. So we don't get 87,000 emails about why didn't you put them in when you had the street under construction. So I would just do it.
Okay, other comments? It sounded like we were going to leave it up to staff, unless people feel differently about speed humps. Other comments or questions or thoughts? Tom, Stephen, you think you have what you need?
I think so. I think it's been helpful.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have, we're back with 102 South Sprecher Road again. Sean, are you going to do that?
Yes, I am. Share my screen here. This is kind of cleanup on a project that I had brought here on January 25th to the TC. We had some feedback when that was brought. Just a refresher. This project is located at the intersection of Milwaukee and Sprecher. It's in the southwest corner. This blue box kind of is showing where the street is. It's connecting Milwaukee to Sprecher. This is shown in the neighborhood plan. There's a private development going in. This is the site plan for the private development. The street goes north-south along their frontage on the west side of their site, and eventually is planned to extend to Sprecher Road at a future date when that site redevelops. So when I took this here to this commission on January 25th, we got feedback that the street should be narrowed from 32, and we kind of settled on 28 feet for the width due to the fire requirements that we kind of talked about in the project before. We kind of landed on that, but then we had some conversations with the attorney's office in the last few weeks, and it appears that we've kind of just put the cart before the horse with the how we can use complete green streets with these redevelopment sites, the subdivision regulations, CSMs, installation of new streets. So what we heard from the attorney's office was that we have to follow the subdivision regulation ordinances until those are updated, which is something that we're working on doing. So the 28 foot that we had talked about would be in violation of the ordinance if we were to build that. So I had originally proposed when I came here in January to do a 32-foot street, the bump out at Driscoll Drive, narrowing it. And that, I guess, is what I wanted to follow up with this project and give an update on that. We'd have to go back to the 32-foot cross section to comply with the subdivision regulations, the ordinances in 16.23. And we did talk in January about the potential of a raised crossing at Milwaukee and this future street. We're still looking at that. Engineering has to design that and make sure that that works for stormwater on the street. So that's something that we're going to look at. And then we were also discussed, a potential speed bump on the new street. So even though we're not getting, I guess, the width that we had discussed, a month ago, I think that these traffic calming mitigations that should help the situation. And also, the street will be a dead end for a while. So there won't be a lot of traffic until that extends to Sprecher. But I just wanted to come to clarify that and what we discussed, we cannot do until the subdivision regulations are updated, and that is for these new streets. So if we have any questions, I can answer them.
And Yang and I talked a little bit earlier, and Yang, maybe you could, or Steve or somebody could provide some additional clarification, because it's my understanding that the timing is at the timing when the application is filed that determines what has to be followed. Because, right? So even if chapter 1623 is updated, this would have already been filed prior to that, regardless, correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah, when the CSM gets, when the CSM gets submitted, that is, the guidelines at that time have to be followed.
Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm just trying to get a little more clarity. I'm like scanning through that 1623 now. So is it because there's specific widths described in that ordinance, or because it's a master plan, and also you just said CSM. I'm not sure what that is. So maybe just a little more clarity.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So a CSM is a certified survey map. It's I guess it's a way to subdivide land when you have less than 5 parcels. So it's a way so that because it's a subdivision of parcels, it would fall under the land use subdivision regulations. That would fall under the guidelines of 1623, and the ordinances, which haven't been updated in a while, are very ironclad specific about which right of way coincides with what width. So with the 60-foot right of way, it says that a 32-foot street I guess must be built in that. So it's very very prescriptive, I'd say, which is one of the reasons that we're trying to when we update with Complete Green Streets, we're trying to give a little more flexibility there, but it's very prescriptive as it's written today.
I found it. Thank you.
Yeah, I looked at it too, Chris, and it was like 60 pages, I think, or something like that. For 1623.
The specific section where it talks about the street list is 1623 8A84. So it's quite a mouthful, but it's it's deep in the regulations.
Thank you. Harold, go ahead.
Yeah, unfortunate, but there's nothing we can do. So I think what we should do, however, given the situation, is I think that increases the importance of putting that raised crossing in there to have like this gateway effect where it's obvious, you're no longer on Milwaukee Street, you're on this, for now, short dead-end street. I don't think the speed bump at this point, I mean, given the discussion we just had, about not really being much cost savings at this point. Is that important? And hopefully
Yeah,
by the
so
time the remainder of the future street will be built, I think we'll try to have that at 28 feet, which should provide that traffic calming effect. So, yeah,
so I guess I just wanted to say, so the speed bump, I guess it would be when we have these new streets, it's at the developer's cost, the building of the streets. So I guess the cost savings would be that developer is buying the speed bump rather than the city. So like on reconstruction, like you saw in Harvey earlier, that's a city project where we're paying for. So we would pay for the speed bump there. But on projects like this, we have redevelopment and it's a new street and developer pays for it, there would be the cost savings that developer would pay for it and not the city.
okay, I changed my mind completely. Let's get that speed bump in there.
Tom, did you have a comment with regard to that before we go on to anything else Harold has?
Yeah, kind of in the same vein. These new streets, it's hard for them to qualify for improvements under the Safe Streets Madison, because they just don't have the crash history and the like. And so Alder Paulson is very familiar with this. He has, constituents screaming at him for traffic calming and can't. So if they can be proactively put in either under the reconstruction program or at the developer's cost, at this point, it's probably the best way to do it until we can get 1623 changed. And we are working on that, and hopefully that could be changed by June or July of this year. But until then, it's kind of what we have.
Okay. Thanks, Tom. Alder Paulson, go ahead.
Yeah, I just really wanted to stress asking for the speed bump here. The raised crosswalk is great. The little narrower bump out, I think, will help too. But the extra help, Driscoll, we already see people pulling out and gunning it, coming out of the parking lots and gunning down that short hop. We're gonna have it coming out of this because pointing at the screen like you can see this at the that turnaround at that entrance there. I think we're gonna have people pulling out of that parking lot and gunning up to Milwaukee Street to get going. And so the extra speed bump, especially right before that intersection, there's all sorts of kids that live on Driscoll and play out in the streets there. So just another reminder to force you to slow down. I think it's going to be really important. And then when the future street comes, I think there is some real discussion about, are people going to use it to cut through and avoid the interchange there, and because it's a one way you can take the right onto the new street and pop out and take another right and be on Milwaukee Street and avoid. It's a four-way stop now. Someday it might be lights, and avoid that. So yet another disincentive to do that, I think, is going to be really important. So I really hope we can put that there. And I'm super excited about the raised crossings. I love all the raised crossings that we've been building, and I want to put more of them in. Like if there's a construction site that's not gonna have them, I might sneak out at night and put some extra dirt under the ground to see if I can guerrilla raised crossing myself. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, other comments or questions? Just something I'd like to think about and talk about a little bit further, both the change to the existing TC ordinance and the new recreated Transportation Commission ordinance passed the council last night. And they both say that the Transportation Commission must approve any variances, any design variances from Complete Green Streets. And TC shall determine the right-of-way use and geometric designs. So, until, I'm just wondering if we don't have a little bit of a conflict there between that and existing Chapter 16 until 16 gets moved, but something we can take offline and certainly talk about. Tom?
Yeah, actually, the resolution was changed a little bit that got entered into to Legistar, and so for subdivisions, the TC will recommend the plan commission grant or deny variances, because they are the only ones, I guess, that have that power. However, within reconstructions, the TC has full power. But for the subdivisions, I guess.
Yeah, I printed off. I have the updated ones. I printed them off and I'm reading them. So I just want to make sure that if if Chapter 1623 says something today, and that is there are variances from what Complete Green Streets says, is that going to cause it to have to come back to TC? So not something we need to explore tonight, but certainly something that we need to be aware of. Until it doesn't sound like it's imminent that Chapter 16 is going to be updated, Tom. It sounds like you said June or July. So that, that gives us several months of looking at things where we're going to need to understand what our job is and what we need to be paying attention to. So, and with that little glitch thrown in that, when a certified survey map is filed is what takes into account, as Sean was talking about earlier. So even things after Chapter 16 is updated, if the CSM was filed prior, so there are all these timing things that, it sounds like traffic engineering and city engineering and the Transportation Commission, we're all going to have to understand as we look at these, which rules are we operating under on this particular project, depending on the timing. So Yang, does that sort of follow what we talked about earlier?
Yes. Okay. So kind of interesting, I guess, transition period. But eventually I think things are going to be cleaned up. And hopefully we can avoid these confusions. So I'll have, here I want to say that, for these, for example, for this issue, even staff was, traffic engineering staff are not aware of it. I think we know that the council adopted the Complete Green Street Guide, and we know the intention is to, implement that. But for this case, we do have to go by the ordinance. That's the city attorney office interpretation. So we'll continue to count on them as we go through the transition period, making sure that before we bring to other projects to TC, we'll have questions. Any doubt, we check with the attorney's office, making sure we're operating under the appropriate procedure. So so definitely it's an interesting time period.
Yeah, and it's a good discussion for us to have now, because going forward, at least until we have a brand new TC, then this group is aware of what's going on and will be waiting to hear what follows. What are we supposed to be following on this particular situation? So very helpful update, and I'm glad you brought it back, Sean, so that we know and we understand what's changed and why. So very much appreciated. Other comments or questions? Anything else from you, Sean or Yang or Tom? Alderperson. Anybody? Okay. Bridget, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, speaking at the last minute. So I do have a question just about Sprecher Road, and wondering if anybody with the city has any information about kind of the southern part of Sprecher there. It's an area due to some other project that I'm interested in what may be, if anything, on the horizon for improvements to the remainder of Sprecher to the south there. Is that on anyone's radar, or is that not something planned at this time?
I guess, what do you have an area in particular? Like, are we?
Yeah, particularly the southern end of Sprecher is what I'm interested in. The endpoint where it dead ends there.
Oh, at Buckeye.
Yeah.
I guess I don't think we don't have any, projects on the horizon, but
Yeah. Okay.
I guess the ultimate plan was to have Sprecher, realigned to the east to avoid that area where there's all those single family homes. And we have some of the right of way there, but not all of it. But I don't think we have anything on the horizon at this point.
Okay, that's good to know though about the potential realignment in the future. So thank you.
Tom, you had your hand up earlier. Did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted to mention that our special area plan for that area does have a realignment, but just as Sean said, it's on the distant horizon, far distant horizon. Nothing we're looking at soon.
Okay, very helpful. Alder Paulson, go ahead.
Just on Sprecher, the Transportation Commission has approved a couple of approved crosswalks across Sprecher to the south here, and some of them are in, and some of them are coming in, and we're really anxious to help that because Sprecher is a bit of a speedway, and the RFBs and the better crossing markings are helpful. And the south end of Sprecher and Cottage Grove is starting to turn into a more interesting area as the Quick Trip is open there now. There's a little strip mall. Going to be a little bit more development in there, so it's starting to get a little hopping down there. So, and that's where the turnarounds for the buses are. The D and the C basically come to basically that Quick Trip, and that's where they turn around and circle back. So come on out to District 3 sometime and check it out.
All right, thank you. Other comments or questions? Okay, thanks again for bringing it back, Sean, and providing the update for us.
Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next item is item 5, which is update from the Transportation Policy and Planning Board. Clearly, we were in on part of that meeting since part of that was a joint meeting. And as I mentioned earlier, both of those joint items were approved last night. Version 2 of the recreated Transportation Commission ordinance, which did incorporate the recommendations from TC and TPPB. So, Chris, other comments from the joint meeting or from your TPPB meeting?
I almost forgot there was a second half of that meeting. Yeah, it was mainly cleaning up some ordinances related to prohibitions of bike use on footbridges and prohibitions on trick riding and some restrictions on selling and renting bicycles that all were out of date. So.
Okay, I think you did an Hawthorne neighborhood plan too, was that?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, but obviously the big items were covered during the joint portion of it. So, any comments or questions for Chris? Thanks, Chris. Announcements from the chair. I did want to let you know that the recreated TC ordinance was approved, and the accessible taxi cab grant program resolution was approved as well, and that will be coming back to the Transportation Commission as details are developed, because TC approval of the scoring system for the program was required in the resolution. So that was still in there when it was approved, so that will be coming back to us as well. Any other announcements, anybody? Harold?
Not an announcement, but if it's in order, a question about the change to the Transportation Commission. So, I mean, since this affects us as a commission, like when does this go into effect? And I guess what are the consequences for membership? Do we know this yet?
Yeah, I think we could probably talk about that under item 5, so we can sort of slide back to that since that was update from the Transportation Policy and Planning Board. So the effective date, I'll just handle that and then throw it to Tom Lynch. the effective date is upon appointment of the members of the Transportation Commission. So until that happens, and that's a little unclear as to whether that's the actual council date or exactly what that means. But anyway, till they're appointed, we operate as is. And I was going to suggest that maybe we have that maybe on the next at the next meeting, so we could maybe talk about logistics a little bit, and maybe get into it a little bit deeper, because it's not actually on the agenda. Unless, Tom, you have just like a quick update that would still fall under what we talked about at the Transportation Policy and Planning Board.
Yeah, it was added. The effective date was added, and
that was in the original one, I think. But go ahead. Doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. There were so many kind of last minute changes yesterday afternoon that I had to. With the amendment that was passed by the TC, there will be, I don't want to put it, about 5, there'll be 5 less positions for resident appointments. And early interactions with the mayor seem to indicate that the appointments would probably come in April. And so she'll be making those appointments, providing, I guess, both instances it's a she, right? Yeah, we've been beginning to look at the categorization and the different slots that need to be filled with the new membership requirements.
Yeah, and those membership requirements are fairly in alignment with what the Transportation Commission ordinance has said in the past. So that's really nothing new for folks on the Transportation Commission. It's very different from the Transportation Policy and Planning Board. But in any event, does that give you a quick answer there, Harold? And I think when we talk about future agenda items, I was guessing that people might be kind of interested in transition and how that might happen. So we could certainly put that on as an agenda item so we can talk about it in more depth.
Yeah, thank you. Just want to know if we have another meeting, or if maybe not. And it sounds like, yes, our regular scheduled meeting will happen. That's all I need to know.
Well, I would assume so, because Tom, it's a 2-meeting process, correct?
Yeah.
When something.
I suspect that the TC for the 22nd and then April 12th will probably occur under the current. And then following that, there may be, changes. Again, this have to be careful, because this, the role of appointments is the mayor's role, right? And so.
Right. Yep. Right. So we have we have a second meeting scheduled in March on the 22nd. And there isn't a council meeting until April 18th, at least according to the schedule I'm looking at. And obviously there's a mayoral election and council elections on April 4th. But there's a meeting on April 18th and then another meeting on the 25th. So I don't know if it could happen that quickly with introduction on the 18th or the 25th. Who knows?
If this were to happen the way it normally would happen, it would be introduced on the 18th, and then the resident members would be approved in the first meeting of May, which I think is May 2nd. The alder appointments would be effective, I think, April 18th, because those occur with the changing of the council. There could be appointments made under suspension of rules, but I don't think that that's going to occur. But it is possible, and that would speed up the process.
Okay. So thanks for that update, Tom. Obviously, it impacts everybody, and everybody's very interested in and knowing what's going to happen and how that's all going to work. Okay, in terms of future agenda items, I'll add transition to recreated TC as an item for us to talk about, because, you know, there could be things like maybe a different night, you know, different meeting night, because TPPB meets on Monday and TC meets on Wednesday. So there's all sorts of things to think about there. So we'll add that, and we can talk about that some more. We have Safe Streets Madison slated to come back. We had some changes to our TC annual work plan, and with a transition to a new TC, it would be good to have all of our updates in place, and then a new TC can decide if they want to use that work plan and have a handbook and a website and all those kinds of things. So I have that slated. Anybody have any other future agenda items that you would like considered that we can add to the list? Okay, seeing no hands, thanks for coming to a second meeting. The logistics were just not possible for us to get this in on Monday as well. So thanks for committing to 2 meetings this week. It's very much appreciated, and we need a motion to adjourn. Harold.
So moved.
And Robbie, that's a second, and then Bridget, and we have a whole bunch of seconds and thirds and fourths. So I'm assuming unanimous consent vote. Nobody's ever voted no on adjourning. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.